So we'll call to order the February 13th meeting of the Planning Commission of the Town of Los Gatos. Welcome all members of the public who are here with us in person and those who are watching on television. We'd ask for a roll call from the staff first.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Bourgeois?
Here.
Commissioner Birch?
Here.
Vice Chair Smith?
Here.
Chair Erickson?
Here.
And Commissioner Sayoc and Tallis have excused absences this evening.
Thank you very much. Would everyone please stand and join Vice Chair Smith in the Pledge of Allegiance. So before we proceed with the tonight's meeting, let me make a couple of comments for the members of the public who are here and those that are on television. So the Town of Los Gatos strongly encourages, as the planning commissioners do, active participation on the part of the public. It's a hallmark part and an important part of democracy and a really key part of how we do our business well on behalf of the town council and the citizens of the Town of Los Gatos. We would ask that as we participate, you do that in a respectful manner, in a passionate but respectful manner on the topics that you want to speak on. If you would like to speak tonight, there will be two types of opportunities to speak. One, when we do what is called verbal communication, which the Town of Los Gatos does at all public meetings, which is that a member of the public can speak for 3 minutes on any topic that is not on the agenda. And then one may also speak during the public portion of the public hearing of any agenda item. If you want to do either of those kinds of things, we would ask that you fill out one of these buff-colored cards, as some people already have, that are on the backs of the seats, backs of the benches in the audience area with your name and so forth. Give it to the clerk, and then we can call you forward in the appropriate moment. And I would especially appreciate your writing your name very clearly so that it makes it easy for me to read and pronounce so that I can get your name correct. So if you would do that, and we would be very excited about your participation tonight. We have a couple of written communications desk items. We'll let the staff alert us to what those are.
You have copies of two different presentations that are going to be given by applicants this evening. One is for item 1 and one is for the study session item. And there is also some corrected data for the study session item, and that's what this sheet is.
And additionally, there's a desk item for item number 2 as well.
Thank you. Because of last members of the commission, since one of the desk items was a rather lengthy one, 20 some odd pages, has everyone had a chance to read that? So what I think we'll do at this moment is take about 5 or 10 minutes to let people finish reading that before we move forward with the meeting. Okay, now that we've got our homework done, we can proceed. So we have minutes that were distributed for the meeting of January 23rd, 2013. Are there corrections, additions to the minutes, or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner O'Donnell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes passed unanimously. The members of the Planning Commission also serve on 4 different committees in the town: the General Plan Committee, the Conceptual Design Advisory Committee, the Sustainability Committee, and the Historic Preservation Committee. And there was a meeting of the Historic Preservation Committee yesterday afternoon, and Commissioner Birch will report on that for us.
Thank you. The Historic Preservation Committee had a special meeting yesterday to consider an architectural and site application for 115 North Santa Cruz Avenue. They're requesting approval of a sunshade structure for an outdoor dining deck. The proposal was approved with comments.
Thank you very much. Now we would move to a place where we have verbal communication, where any member of the public can speak about any topic they would like that's not on the agenda for up to 3 minutes. We don't have any cards for anyone who wants to speak about the Giants in spring training or any other topic that's not on the agenda. So unless someone wants to come forward at this point in time, we'll move forward with the agenda. The first item on our agenda is architectural site application S12073, which is requesting approval to construct a new single-family residence at 15310 Santella Court in the already approved plan development of the Highlands of Los Gatos. Ask for a show of hands for all the members of the commission who visited the property. Are there any recusals from this? If not, we would ask the staff then to give us their report.
The Highlands project was approved in 2005, and initially the roads, retaining walls, and some of the utilities were installed, and then the property sat idle for several years. A new developer purchased the property last year, 2011, and has subsequently come in with applications for development of 8 of the parcels, and they are working on, or 10 parcels. Some of those have already been acted on by the Development Review Committee, because they were small enough size homes and in compliance with the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines, and those are indicated in the staff report. This particular application does have a proposal for floor area slightly above what staff has the discretion to approve, and it has been forwarded to the Planning Commission for that reason. Story poles are on the site, and staff does not have anything to add to the staff report. We are available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Avila. Are there questions for the staff at this time? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you. I know I ask this question probably once a year, but I always forget. What happens to the tree impact fee money when they're paying an in lieu fee for tree replacements? What happens to that money?
That goes into a fund that is specifically for trees, and those will be planted somewhere in the town of Los Gatos. Typically, they would be street trees or trees in parks, medians, that sort of area.
Okay, because I think I raised this issue during the PD, and it just seems like something that maybe could have or was handled at the PD level, but I understand we're looking at Site 12, but there's so much acreage and property out there. I would think there would be room to fit the trees on the site as a whole, and I don't know if that's something that needed to be addressed during the PD or not. I would much rather see the mitigation trees go on site in this fantastically beautiful oak woodland than go into a fund that funds a street tree. So that's just a comment. I don't know if that's something that could be dealt with.
The trees can certainly go anywhere within the development. There are 66 acres, so you are correct. There are plenty of areas where trees could potentially be planted. There is a streetscape planting plan, so some of the trees are going to go along roadways. And there's a number of areas they could go within scenic easements, the area where the slide repair occurred on Lot 2. The numbers that are shown on the landscape plan for this particular project are simply showing a balancing. The trees do not necessarily all fit on this particular lot, so they showed what could logically fit on this lot and then showed the balance to be an in lieu fee. But trees could absolutely be planted elsewhere within the development, and that would be sufficient or be equivalent to paying the in lieu fee.
Can I just follow up on another landscaping question since we're on the topic? There's 3 kind of landscaping zones on the site. We have kind of a near house ornamental, then we have a transition zone, and then we have kind of the native oak woodland. I'm assuming, because it doesn't really specify, but I'm assuming the planting palette for that transition zone would be consistent with what's in our, I mean, could we condition it to be consistent with what's in our hillside development guidelines?
Yes, it is consistent with the hillside development standards and guidelines, and the developer does not intend to do full landscape plans on these homes. They're going to construct the homes and then sell them, and then the buyers would do the landscape plans. So they will be primarily dealing with the required replacement trees, getting those in before we final, and then leaving the detailed landscape plans to future homeowners.
But they would be restricted within those zones
Correct.
based on our
Correct,
hillside
and particularly
development. Okay.
within the scenic easement areas and the natural areas, those would require native planting only.
Okay. What about the transition zone?
We would want to see something consistent with what's on the approved landscape plan.
Great, thank you.
Other questions for the staff at this time? If not, we would call Steve Abbs forward, who's the applicant. Okay.
Hi, I'm going to be as brief as possible. We've got quite a team here tonight for you to answer questions for you if you have any. We've got myself, I'm the Vice President of Land Acquisition and Development for David On. We've got Dennis Rosario here as our Vice President of Construction. Steve Abbs is our Land Acquisition and Site Development Manager. And Vance Graham from Bassinian Lagoni. Vance is going to give the bulk of our presentation here for you. And David Wilson from HMH, or Civil Engineers. Janet Kahn from NGO. And David Fox is our landscape architecture consultant. Having said that, I'm glad to be here tonight. It's good to see you, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. At this time, I am going to turn it over to Vance Graham. We've got a brief presentation for you, and with your permission, I will dim the light so it shows up a little bit better on the screen. Is that okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Vance Graham with Bassinian Lagoni Architects. With your permission, I'm going to remove this so I can get a little closer to the computer. If I can direct your attention over your right-hand shoulder, we have copies of 3 of the exhibits that are shown in this very brief PowerPoint presentation. But as you are all relatively familiar with the site, we get into a first slide here that sort of shows where everything's at. North is up. We've got Shady Lane sort of winding through there. Los Gatos Boulevard is off to our left off the slide at some distance. The lot that we're focusing on this evening is lot 12 here. You can tell from the topography here that we're sort of out on a knoll with these group of lots. And as staff had mentioned, we are requesting a slightly larger area than is allowed, but we are within tolerance between the 6,400 and 5,400 allowed. And before I go to the next slide, which is an animation, I don't want you to have too much shock. It's going to go to white for the entire site, and we're going to spin down into lot 12 to give you an idea of how we go about studying the lots and the design and how they respond to the topography. And then also talk a little bit about the our reaction to the trees. We're circling down into lot 12 here, and this is where the knoll was, so it's sloping off here, and the contours will start coming into relief here. And you can see that we've done a very wide, very shallow design so that we could respond to the downslope as unimpactfully as possible. You'll also note this kink here on the end with what is actually the master bedroom. We're avoiding a very large tree here. So we're trying to react as best as we can to the land as possible. You'll notice that the front facade is well broken up, but it's fairly shallow in its relief, again in response to the drop-off that we have here. In support of what we were just showing there, we'll have, again, copies of the exhibits that are shown on the wall. This would be an image of the home across the street on what is actually lot 6, and sort of from a left flank. And you'll see right here the large tree that we bent the house around to avoid. We just think it's beautiful, and as mentioned previously, that's part of the charm of the site is the wonderful oak woodland. We've got a combination of some stucco and some tile. We've changed massing and so forth to try and break up the length of the home. Basically, the body of the house is here, and then we've got a garage complex here. Next image is actually from the other side of the valley. We're up on the side of the hill looking back at the rear of the home, and just to orient you a little bit, that would be the garage side, and then this is the body of the home. And this area here is the part that we bent to avoid that tree. Another thing that we did to avoid trees, and quite to our surprise, we were lucky enough to be working with an arborist on the project and wanted to really fine-tune the project into the site. And originally we had this balcony over here, but we discovered that these were very good trees and that the tree we were trying to save was in very poor health. So, yellow light. So we've relocated this balcony here. And then you can also see from this slide that we're being very light on the land, not doing a tremendous amount of rear area with landscape. The final slide is showing the actual approach to the home up, I think it's up Sentinel or Shady, whatever the name of the street is. And we wanted to show how the existing trees, how the house fits into the existing trees, and refer your attention to the garage complex and here how we've broken down the massing. As Jeff mentioned earlier, we're available for all questions and are happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Are there questions for Mr. Graham or other representatives of the applicant at this time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We only have one other card. Is David Weissman?
I'd like to start off by publicly thanking several officers from Davidon, for voluntarily working with me to strengthen the fencing and the tree protection aspects of the CC&Rs that will apply to this entire PD project. I have several specific recommendations regarding development of Lot 12. Number one, everyone says that they want to protect trees, okay? Then let's issue a setback variance for Lot 12 so that the proposed house can be situated from 15 to 20 feet from the road and not the required 30 feet. This action alone, looking at Exhibit 8, appears to save 9 of the 12 trees slated for removal. Grading would also be easier on the flatter section. Let's remember that different oak trees in different states of vigor provide different things to a habitat. Where an arborist sees an oak with holes, a biologist sees a nesting area for woodpeckers. Number two, the proposed 2,100 square foot cellar should be reduced. As proposed, this cellar will result in 1,800 cubic yards or some 200 dump trucks loads to be taken off site. Number three, staff had earlier recommended eliminating the single-car garage. This should be done. In the beginning, in the bigger Highlands project picture, I encourage all planning commissioners to walk the entire project, not just to look at Lot 12. To just notice the extensive grading that has occurred on lots 2, 5, and 13. Why didn't the geotechnical reports associated with the original Highlands application reflect these unstable areas? Lastly, I highlight the tree protective ordinance. The grove of the largest oak trees on the entire 66 acres sits on Lot 2. There are now 9 heritage trees present on Lot 2, which is 13 trees less than the original 22 trees shown on the 2005 approved PD map. Yet not one of these remaining 9 trees is protected by the required tree protection ordinance fencing. The ground under these trees is littered by machinery, concrete, gasoline containers, 5-gallon containers containing unknown fluids. The construction vehicles routinely park under these oaks, compacting their roots and dripping oil and lubricants onto the ground. So I ask, where is the monitoring arborist and town staff who are supposed to be protecting these trees by enforcing town codes?
Thank you, Mr. Weissman. Are there questions this time? Thank you very much. So the applicant would have 3 additional minutes to comment on those comments or make any other comments they would like to make at this time.
I'll be brief. We have been talking with Mr. Weissman on several items, but some of these things that he's mentioned right now haven't really entered the conversation, to my knowledge. And 15 to 20 foot setback, or we may have talked months ago about this, but I don't think it would be wise for the commission to go away from the standards that have been established in the hillside guidelines. And I think we have done a good job of locating the house. As far as a seller being reduced, the seller in this particular price market, it's one way that we can give some people some extra living space that we think is very demanded in this location. One thing about this site is we had some significant rehab on some of the improvements that were completed. We've done a tremendous amount of rework, and in Lot 2 in particular, there was a tremendous amount of sub-excavation required just for stabilization of that lot. And so it's not as simple as it may seem in that situation. Eliminating the garage, that's basically the reason we're here tonight. We think that's a very important element to the overall nature of the house. Due to the constraints of the sites, with these size houses, it's very hard for us to reasonably get more than a 3-car garage. And we think that there's situations where a 4-car is going to be a very desired situation for people that would be moving up there. So it is important to us to get the 4-car garage. We are still below the 6,400 foot allowable top square footage that would be associated with the slope density analysis and all of that with the hillside guidelines. As far as litter, not protecting trees, the site is fluid, but we basically are doing the best we can. When we like the trees, we look at trees as an asset to the project. We don't willy-nilly just get trees out of the way for convenience. So they're valuable to us, and it is our intent to do as good a job as we can on trees. So I would say that's, anything else to add? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for the applicant? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Could I ask a clarifying statement from staff that will lead into a question of the applicant?
Absolutely.
So I believe you said it in your introduction. Could you reiterate exactly why this is before the Planning Commission and was not approved at staff level, if it's within that 6,400 foot total limit?
Staff does not have the ability to approve a house larger than 5,000, and we will typically allow the additional 400 square foot garage allowance to be added on to that, which would be 5,400 maximum. So their floor area is above that, which is why we refer this to the Planning Commission.
And is that in the hillside standards, or is that in the PD?
Yes, it's part of the hillside development standards and guidelines.
Okay, great. So that leads into my question of the applicant is, again, we need to make a decision, and we need to make that decision based on some evidence. And I haven't really heard justification of why you can't be under that limit. You know, we need to have some rationale as to why, you know, this house should exceed the limits we have set forth in our hillside standards.
It's basically a case of having an availability of some product that could have a 4-car garage. This particular lot would allow it. It's long enough, and it allows a situation where we can get the garage. We think that it's going to be a very valuable component for the demand up there, and it's just something that we feel is very important to be able to include with this house. We think it's a strong architectural element, and I think that it creates a pleasing view when you come up, quite frankly. It's an interesting element. But it's very important from the standpoint of just marketability of the house. We think it's going to be an addition for us. these lots are expensive. They've been very expensive to refurbish, create, and construction is incredibly expensive for what we're doing. We put a tremendous amount of time into these designs, and every single one of these houses is a project in itself, every single one of them. So it's not so much a, here's why we have to do it. This is a situation where we think it benefits it. And instead of going at some great lengths to take out more trees in another house or something, this particular house lent itself to this particular opportunity.
Other questions of the applicant at this time?
Just want to clarify, 6,400 square feet is the allowable floor area for the property, and they are well under that number. 5,400 is the largest amount of floor area staff has the authority to approve at the Development Review Committee level.
Thank you, Ms. Abel. We'll close the public portion of the public hearing now and ask for comments and discussions from the commission. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just as background, we've, most of us at least, have participated on the development of this property for some years now. They've had, not the present owners, but there's a lot of difficulty. There was a lot of contention. There was a lot of money spent on solving problems that I think have been solved. When I first looked at this property, I was concerned essentially about the length of the home. It looked, first blush at least, it looked very long to me. However, when you look at the particular site and you see the narrowness of the project, I could begin to understand better why it was as long as it was. And as far as the fourth garage, I guess all I can say is I would like to see this project get built out. And we did have our town architect go over the plans, and we thought they were wonderful plans. So I'm speaking, I had to think about this because I went out to the property this morning, walked around, looked at it, and I think there are reasons for what they want to do, and as it's been pointed out, it's within the ambit of what we can do in any event. So I'm actually just speaking in favor of it.
Other comments at this time? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Has staff given any consideration to that option of allowing a variance for the setback? I mean, I know that was it's in the guidelines, but it does seem like it would reduce tree impacts. Was that ever discussed, or?
No, it wasn't. We always try to get a project to comply fully with zoning and hillside standards, and unless there was a really unusual circumstance, I wouldn't recommend a variance to an applicant.
I'll just follow up. As the commission might remember, that the requirements under state law to find a variance are very strict, that you have to find some very unique characteristics that justify that.
Thank you, Ms. Propp. Other questions, comments? Or the chair would entertain a motion. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I will make a motion that we take the following actions to approve the architecture and site application. We would find that the project is categorically exempt under California Environmental Quality Act, as more specifically provided in Exhibit 3 to our package, that the project is consistent with PD Ordinance 2147, that is also spelled out on Exhibit 3 as finding that the project is consistent with HDS&G and Hillside Specific Plan. We would find that the motion would find that the project is consistent with the considerations for approval of architectural and site applications, and we would approve architect and site application S12073, subject to the conditions set forth in Exhibit 4, the applicable performance standards in PD Ordinance 2147, which is found in Exhibit 2, and the development plans which are attached as Exhibit 10. So that would be my motion.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Smith. So motion was made by Commissioner O'Donnell, seconded by Commissioner Smith Any comments from members of the commission? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you. I'm really struggling with this one. I have to say, I mean, I think the house is beautiful. I think it's a better design than some of the previous lots that a lot of them haven't come to us, but the ones that had come to us a couple years ago, I think this is a much better design. Different lot, but the style, I think it blends in pretty well. That single garage on the side, though, it stood out to me on the plans. It stood out to me in the field. It just seems awkward to me. So I think I'm going to support the motion, but I would make a request to the maker of the motion and the seconder that we add a condition that instead of an in lieu fee, that they find room on the site at large to place the replacement trees instead of, I mean, there seems adequate space on 60 acres to plant an additional 17 trees or whatever it was, instead of paying into the street tree program. So that would be my one request for the maker of the motion to consider.
I would accept that so long as we say that the applicant present a plan to do so, and to the extent that there might be any difficulty with the number of trees as determined by staff, that would then, as to those trees only, and perhaps there won't be any, they could defer that amount of money as originally intended. So I think that satisfies your request, but it also anticipates problems we don't know about. And now and the seconder, I think, would have to agree.
Is staff clear about how the motion was amended? I would just like to comment that I share Commissioner Bourgeois' concern about the fourth garage. It appeared awkward to me, and I wasn't fully convinced that it was necessary, but I'll respect that. So I share that concern and would enthusiastically support the amendment to the motion with respect to trees. Any other comments about the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Their appeal rights.
Yes, anyone that's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal it to the Town Council. The forms are available in the clerk department, and there is a fee for filing of the appeal. And the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. The next item on our agenda is architectural site application S13-003, which is a request to construct a new second story on a single-family residence located at 89 Alpine Avenue. So, show of hands from all the members of the commission who visited the property. Are there any recusals? I don't believe so. Thank you. Ms. Savage, I think you have a staff report for us.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. The proposal consists of a new second story, a first story addition, and a front entry porch remodel. The Director of the Community Development Department has purview for projects of this scope. However, the town received written objections that could not be resolved at staff level, and therefore the project is being referred to the Planning Commission. The site contains existing non-conforming setbacks for the existing structure, and the project proposes to maintain those non-conforming setbacks, including using those non-conforming setbacks for the new second story. The neighbor does object to using the non-conforming setbacks for the second story, and you do have a desk item tonight that includes additional explanation of his objections. The project is compatible with the immediate neighborhood and the residential design guidelines in terms of architectural style. And the project matches the existing setbacks on the property and complies with those setbacks permitted by town code. This concludes staff presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Commissioner Bourgeois.
Could you comment? I'm still digesting the 20-page desk item we had. Could you comment on the chimney issue as to where the setback is measured from and how that relates to the new wall?
On the first story, at the chimney, there is a shed roof and a wall that's at the outer edge of the chimney. Above that shed roof, the chimney projects from the gable end wall. On the first story, where the wall is at the same outer edge of the chimney, we do consider that structure and would count that as an existing non-conforming setback.
And that is where that distance, that setback distance, projecting up along the new wall is where the second story is at that same distance.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for the staff? If not, we would invite the applicant forward to make any comments they would like to add.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with the commission tonight. My name is Lou Ryan, and we're the owners. My wife Cheryl and I own 89 Alpine Avenue. And 89 Alpine Avenue, as Jennifer just described, has applied for a substantial addition to the house. We raised our children and grew up in the Santa Clara Valley, and for years we've had our hearts set on moving to Los Gatos. We finally found our dream street, which was Alpine Avenue, and bought a home on Alpine Avenue just over a year ago, or just under a year ago. We knew when we walked into the house that the house was a single-purpose home. It was built by an elderly couple 19 years ago for the purpose of retiring. They were elderly and in some cases infirmed, and so the home was built to suit their needs, but wouldn't be practical for anybody else that didn't quite meet that criteria. So walking into the home, we knew we had a major remodel underway. And we said, okay, if we're going to buy this house, which we did immediately, we loved it, loved the street, loved the house, loved the light, location. We said we need to meet a design that fits the criteria that we established for ourselves. And the criteria was very simple. We wanted to build a house that would fit into the entire neighborhood and meet the architectural standards of our surrounding neighbors. We wanted to make sure that we had a house that was completely consistent with building standards of the town of Los Gatos. And then lastly, we wanted to make sure this was a home for the ages for us, because we lived in our last house 26 years and we plan on living in this house for the remainder of time. So we needed to find an architect that we believed would put a design together that met the criteria that I just described. And so we started asking around the town of Los Gatos, close friends, our realtor, Amy McCafferty, and then just coincidentally, we found Chris Spalding, coincidentally because he just happened to be redesigning the house that we're directly adjacent to. We hired Chris Spalding, we gave him our criteria, we told him exactly what we needed to do. Chris then set out to design a house for us that fit that criteria. And we ultimately ended up with what we felt was an extremely practical and home that would meet the criteria, the architectural design for the entire neighborhood, and one that would be well embraced and endeared by our neighbors at large. We then took that home, that design, and we began to socialize it within the neighborhood. And it was at that point that we ran into a conflict. The conflict, of course, is what's represented here tonight, or being presented here tonight. And we hope to come to a equitable resolution as soon as possible. This has been quite a process for us. Fully understand that when a predicament like this happens, the one has to go through the process, and we're glad it exists. Never anticipated the time and energy cost associated with this dispute, but we hope that tonight we'll be able to explain and articulate in very clear language why the design that we've ultimately settled on is best for everyone at large, with the exception of the conflicts, which we hope to resolve. And I'm going to ask Chris to come up and speak right now, and hopefully Chris can explain in very short order what we've done and how we're addressing our new home. Chris?
Hi, since I don't have much time, I'll give a quick reason. I took very seriously the concerns of the immediate neighbor to the right, and I illustrated here the issues of moving the addition back to a 15-foot setback. So this Can you see that? Yeah, so this is what happens if I just take the second floor and move it back the 7 feet that I have to do to make it a 15-foot setback. So obviously that is no longer symmetrical and doesn't look right. So I could fix that by making it symmetrical, and that looks okay from the front. But the problem is that the square footage that I had to cut from the second story to make that symmetrical is about 400 square feet, which then I could stick out the back. But the result is a much bulkier view from the side, which first of all is not what my clients want in floor plan. And I don't think in fact, I think it's more detrimental to the neighbor. So even though if we did this, we would get the wall 15 foot back, but the wall would be, more than double in size. So it's like it doesn't succeed in the purpose, it seems to me. So to me, that's the crux of the matter. Also, I wanted to just quickly address the privacy of the windows. We want to make those clerestory windows and to address that privacy between the two. Any questions?
Questions for the applicants? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I was reading the multiple pages that we recently received, and I'm sorry I can't put my finger on it now, but hopefully you can recall. The neighbor made a suggestion, my recollection is at least, as to how he thinks you could solve the problem. His suggestion, as I recall it, was less dramatic than your indication of what you think it would take to solve the objection. Do you recall his comment? I think it was like 200 square feet difference.
Well, yes. If I just took this from this illustration here. So if I just cut that one side off to 15 feet, that's actually about 160 square feet, and that's not a whole lot. But I can't just take it off one side.
So that's your understanding of his suggestion?
Yeah.
I just couldn't recall. Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant at this time? If not, thank you. So we'd ask Peter Roberts.
Well, that's not my name, but I'll speak anyway. My name is Peter Rehan, and I live at 78 Alpine Avenue. My wife, Lisa Roberts, who's really the brains in the operation, wrote you a letter on January 16th. And I'm here on her behalf and on my behalf to strongly support the application. And I won't repeat everything that Lisa said in her letter, which is much more articulate and artful than I could ever present myself. But I would say a couple of things. First of all, we're delighted with the design. We live right across the street from the house. And I can't pretend that I'm more impacted than my neighbors, who I dearly love, incidentally, who object to this. But I can say that we have 4 windows that look directly out, and it really looks like it's going to be a great design. We're very pleased with it. It's a very modest addition. It's very much in keeping with the neighborhood, and we were really pleased with the restraint that Mr. and Mrs. Ryan used in the design. So we're very, very pleased with that. Secondly, and this probably goes to the heart of our concern, is the alternative. Well, back up. We've lived on the street for 25 years. We've seen virtually every home on the street remodeled extensively. And because of the economics of remodels, homes usually tend to get quite a bit bigger. And our concern, of course, if the Ryan's application isn't approved, they may become discouraged. The economics of doing a project like this become prohibitive. And my concern and our concern is that they end up selling it to somebody else who propose a much more immodest and much greater design, which would be less pleasing and I think less positive for the neighborhood. And and I just want to close by saying, you know, what makes Alpine a great street is not the houses, it's not the rock walls, and it's certainly not the setbacks. It's really the neighbors, every one of the neighbors, and we've lived there 25 years, so we know well enough to know how wonderful the people people are who live there. And to a person, every neighbor is they're just lovely people, and that certainly includes the people who are speaking here tonight, who we dearly love. And we really are looking forward to the Ryans joining our neighborhood. They would be a great fit. Their house will be a great fit. They're lovely people, and we really look forward to having them join us in our neighborhood. And for that reason, we would strongly support the application and ask you to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rion. And I didn't mean to imply that you should have taken your wife's name. Are there questions for Mr. Rihan? If not, no, thank you. John Sullivan.
Hi, my name is John Sullivan, and I live at 95 Alpine. Thanks for your time tonight. I've lived in the town of Los Gatos for about 26 years, and I've been on Alpine for the last 16 years with my wife and my 3 daughters. And I'm really sorry things haven't worked out. I think overall it's a beautiful design. I love the streetscape. I think so much this house looks great. If you travel around the perimeter of the house to see what they've done, it's beautiful. 90% is perfect. It's just this last 10%. It's just this one corner that happens to be the closest to my house really causes the problem. You know, I just met Mr. Ryan tonight for the first time, and I met his wife and the architect just once. There was a meeting at my request. It was a pretty brief meeting, didn't go very well, kind of ended, you know, Ms. Ryan saying, well, town said I had to meet with you, so, you know, I did. And really no changes have ever been made to the plans from their submission in October to what you see on the wall tonight. I think the key issue here is whether a property with non-conforming setbacks should enjoy special privileges. You know, allowing this second-story expansion sends a message that non-conforming properties are more attractive for development in this town. And I think that could trigger a cascade effect on Alpine, where most of the homes are non-conforming, several as close as 5 feet. You got craftsmen that are just, you know, 5 feet off the line. And I think that sends an incorrect message to the town, I mean to anybody who's developing the town, that non-conforming properties are more valuable. You know, so you can see it on Alpine, you can start seeing it in all the old neighborhoods. The proposal calls for, you know, it's the second story is going to end up 8 feet away from my property line with 2 large windows. I'm glad to see there was some, you know, consideration there. I think Clara's story or obscured windows would take care of it. You know, there's kind of an interesting backstory here. That the 20 years ago, there was another non-conforming house that was completely demolished. In fact, the lot was excavated and lowered 2.5 feet. It used to be at the same level as my house. And some extraordinary steps were taken to permit a brand new non-conforming house with these tiny setbacks of, you know, 0 feet and 4 feet on the other. And I don't think your predecessors would have permitted this intensification of the non-conformance that was there before. You know, I think this is asking really for a second bite at the apple. You know, others on the street have pushed their expansion to the rear, where there's over 200 feet available for this house, and there's no need to push a second story into a neighboring setback. And so, you know, the second issue is this fireplace, you know, kind of thing, which just, the whole thing just kind of strikes me kind of odd. You know, to me, these are kind of like the properties of an exterior wall, right? You should be able to have all these things in here. And I think they're trying to cover this fireplace enclosure that has no structural bearing at all, has no heated space. You know, walls aren't 30 inches thick. They're trying to count this, which is completely hidden from my house, and you know, as the new wall, which brings it a couple feet closer. If you actually look at the staff report, page 4 of the bottom of that says that the existing setback's 10 feet, but then in the very next paragraph at the top of page 5, it says the new setback's going to be 8. I mean, so it's the same thing. It's coming 2 feet closer. You know, the October 10th meeting, you guys had great comments. Commissioner Smith, I really loved your comments. I replayed them like 4 times to see what you're talking about how people were involved and cooperating on this thing. You know, unfortunately, in this case, really nobody saw these plans until about October. I think they've been in the works for about 6 months. You know, lastly, I'm not opposed to change as long as it's fair and reasonable. I'm not opposed to them having a second story in their home. I don't think the Ryans are moving here to invade anybody's privacy. I just wish there had been some earlier discussion. You know, really nobody saw these plans to the end. So my request is that you approve the house. I mean, I think it's beautiful, so many of these things. I understand my neighbor's concerns. I think there is a way to set that back part, you know, to not have their master bedroom looking into our bathrooms by going back 15 feet. I think you can make an allowance for the roof line. Even if that cuts over a little bit, I still think you can keep the living space back. I'm not a designer, I'm not an architect, but I think if you do that, if you respect the existing wall, say that, you know, that wall that's up.
Mr. Sullivan, we'd actually ask you to wrap up real quickly.
Okay. You know, that's it. I'd ask you to approve it with a 15-foot setback in that one corner, recognize the existing wall, and I think we're good to go. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Sullivan? Thank you. Henry Richards.
My name is Henry Richards. I appreciate the opportunity to address the commission. To be honest, I haven't really had an opportunity to review any of the designs. I live at 118 Alpine, which is across the street and 2 houses removed from 89 Alpine. I'm on a conforming lot. Anything they do at 89 Alpine will not compromise the privacy of my shower. My only concern is regarding the nonconformity and the regulation of the 15-foot setbacks. I think that and my principal concern is that if this particular design is allowed to proceed, it may perhaps establish a precedent for allowing aggravations of nonconforming property, particularly if that wall is closer to the property line than the existing structure. I'm referring, of course, to the fireplace bump out. So I would just ask the commission to consider the definitions of conforming and nonconforming and the placement of additional structures in such a way that it might not follow those regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Are there questions for Mr. Richards? Thank you. The applicant has an additional 3 minutes to make any other comments they would like.
I just make one comment on the fireplace wall. If you look on our existing floor plan, which is in the top left corner of sheet A2, that wall has cabinets on each side of the fireplace. It's part of the conditioned area, so it's the exterior wall of the house. So I don't know what the issue is there.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yeah, I was finished.
Obviously, the issue is, as far as Mr. Sullivan is concerned, the wall issue. And is there any explanation as to why you believe the far side chimney should be as the wall? I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, but I think that is the issue. And you say, well, because next to it, there are cabinets. And I guess if one has no knowledge, which I have at the moment, on whether it's a wall or not, you can say, well, gee whiz, a wall is normally the end of the building, and then to that you append a chimney. And whether the chimney now assumes the role of the wall is, to me, at least, subject to some open question. So do you have any answer for why that?
Yeah, let me explain.
Okay.
You can see here in this picture, on the first floor, this is the exterior wall of the first floor. It's the rear of the chimney, but it also includes the cabinets on either side, which are part of the conditioned floor area. And once you get above the first floor ceiling, then the gable end of the attic is at the inside edge of the chimney, and this chimney runs clear on the second story, above the first floor. So on the first floor, that's the exterior wall. I've extended that wall up to the new 2-story, which is on the outside of the fireplace of the chimney that stands clear of the roof currently.
So the cabinets you're talking about are interior cabinets?
Yes.
The wall of which is flush with the wall of the, essentially, of the chimney?
Right, so this wall here, see the wall I'm marking?
Right.
That's the existing first floor wall, and I've extended that up to be the second story wall.
Thank you.
Other questions of the applicant this time? If not, thank you very much. We will close the public portion of the public hearing and ask if there are questions from the commission of the staff or comments. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I have a question of the staff, and it may include the town attorney, so I'll send my hello to her down there. What I've heard tonight seems to, the argument, at least in part, centers on really two questions. One legal question is where's the wall? Where's the end of the wall? I just heard Mr. Spaulding's response, which makes sense to me. And the other one is the non-conforming use. And as I understand the town policy and or the law, and I'm not sure which it is, says that so long as you have a non-conforming use, if you're going to build above the non-conforming use, that wall too can come out to the edge of where the non-conforming use otherwise ends. So it's both horizontal and vertical. I guess my question to staff, including the town attorney, is that the town's position because of a legal answer, or because of a policy, or because of a code, or what is the basis of the town's position?
The town code, the town law allows a non-conforming setback to be continued, whether that's horizontal or vertical.
See the town code?
Correct.
Okay, does anybody have a cite on that?
Yes, it is contained in your staff report, and it is 2910-245 and 2910-250.
Thank you very much.
Just as a matter of reference, I think it's on page 4 of the staff report. Correct.
Thank you, it is.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'm going to go ahead and just venture a motion, and we can discuss that. I'm very sympathetic to Mr. Sullivan's position. No remodel or addition is not without its impacts to someone. What I've seen from this design is I think it's going to fit into the neighborhood better from the front. Clearly, Mr. Sullivan, you are the neighbor that is going to be impacted by this. However, I heard a couple speakers talk about precedent and the non-conforming setback. There's policy. This is not a policy-making body. We're the body that interprets the existing policy. So if you're talking about changing an existing policy, we don't have that in our purview. We take the existing codes and interpret applications under that guidance that is dictated by town council. So what I see is it actually a very sympathetically designed to the neighborhood house. And I think it's going to be a lovely addition. And I'm sorry that you're going to be impacted by it, but they followed the rules as far as I can tell. And so for that reason, I am going to make a motion for approval of architecture and site application. I can find that it's categorically exempt pursuant to section 15301 of the California Environmental Quality Act, as adopted by the town, which is in Exhibit 2 of our packet. I can make the required findings that, as required by the residential design guidelines, this is a well-designed home that is very sympathetic to the neighborhood, and I think we have evidence to that effect in our town architect's statements. Make the required considerations as required by 2920-150 of the town code for granting an architecture and site application, and I will approve application S-13-003 with the conditions contained in Exhibit 3. So that's my motion for consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Bourgeois. Do we have a second? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I will second it, but I'll ask the maker if that, I don't believe, and I may be wrong, the present conditions include the window treatment that we've talked about, and I'm wondering if you could include that.
Yes, and that would be that the second floor windows on, what side is that? The right side. The side facing Mr. Sullivan would be clear story windows.
I certainly second the motion as amended or as now made.
Thank you. Is that clear to the staff? Other comments from the commission?
I'll make a comment, and my comment is that it is a beautiful street full of beautiful homes and lovely neighbors, and it's certainly going to continue that way. I do think the design is beautiful and is fitting with the neighborhood. I was glad to see that you solved, Mr. Spalding, the window treatment, because that would have been my objection tonight, and I'm glad that there was a compromise and a fix for that. So with that in mind, I am going to support the motion.
Other comments at this time? If not, all in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So are there appeal rights from the staff?
Yes, there are. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal the decision to the Town Council. Forms available in the clerk's office. There is a fee for filing the appeal, and an appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. So we move to other business report from the Director of Community Development.
Thank you. Wanted to note a few things. We have some environmental documents that have started and or are currently wrapping up. The Albright Office Park draft EIR was released on January 29th. The Planning Commission will be having a study, or not a study session, they will be having a public hearing on February 27th to receive comments on the draft EIR. Anyone who wants to comment on the draft EIR can submit comments to the town, either at that meeting, in writing, via email, or regular mail. And those comments will be addressed in a response to comments document that will be part of the final EIR that will be considered by the Planning Commission when the project comes back for the recommendation on the environmental document as well as the project. We just distributed the notice of preparation of a draft EIR for the North 40. That is going to have a scoping meeting on March 6th. That scoping meeting, we will be taking input from any interested citizens or trustee agencies as to what is addressed in the EIR. And those comments on the notice of preparation must be received by March 15th. We also released a notice of preparation for the EIR for Hillbrook School. That one had a previous mitigated negative declaration and initial study, so a scoping meeting will not be held for that. However, anyone who would like to comment on the notice of preparation has until March 14th to make comments on that. The last thing I would mention is that over the last couple of weeks, the council has had a couple public hearings regarding the issue of firearms. On 2/11, the council directed staff to bring back a temporary moratorium regarding commercial sale of firearms and ammunition so that the council can have some time to evaluate potential land use regulations for these types of uses. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Commissioner Bourgeois.
Just to be clear, on the Albright meeting on the 27th, no action is being taken that night. We're simply receiving public comment.
Thank you. Yes, no action will be taken, and staff will not be responding. We'll just be taking public comment.
Other questions or other matters from other commissioners? If not, we will adjourn the meeting of the Planning Commission of February 13th, and we're going to take a short break, and we will reconvene in about 5 minutes with a study session. So we'll call to order a special study session of the Planning Commission of the Town of Los Gatos on February 13th to consider comments and so forth on a proposed potential future architectural site application, lot line adjustment, and variance application that may be filed sometime in the future. So we would ask for a roll call.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Here.
Commissioner Bourgeois,
Here.
Commissioner Birch,
Here.
Vice Chair Smith,
Here.
and Chair Erickson.
Here.
And Commissioner Sayoc and Talis4 have an excused absence.
Would ask now that are there any recusals for any members of the commission? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Erickson. I live within 500 feet of the proposed project, therefore, by definition, I have a conflict of interest and will be recusing myself tonight.
Thank you. So just for us to be clear as we move forward for everyone, the commission, this is a study session to consider a potential forthcoming application. The commission will be taking comments both from and be able to question the applicant, and will invite the public to comment if they would like. The commission will be taking no action tonight since there is no application at this point in time in front of the commission.
Are you ready?
So we would start with any comments from the staff in addition to what has been presented to us.
I just wanted to clarify that the numbers in the staff report for the current proposal for both 339 and 341 Bella Vista, I handed out a new chart because I had flipped the numbers between the two houses. And so the ones in the staff report were reversed, and these are the correct figures in this loose handout that you received before the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Avila. Any questions of the staff before we begin? If not, let the applicant provide any information to us up to 5 minutes. Introduce yourself.
My name is Dan Ross. I live at 188 Villa Avenue. Tonight also, Mr. Jake Peters is here, who is the owner of the other lot. And then we have our designer in the room as well to help answer questions. I want to read my statement. We acquired this land in 2004. We developed a plan for 2 small homes with input from the Los Gatos Planning Department, which was submitted for approval in 2011. The original plan was recommended for approval by the town planning staff and supported by the town's consulting architect. The point of that statement is simply that we have not been cavalier with regards to this project. We have been patient, civil, in originally submitted plans that were not unusual in relation to the mass, scale, and setbacks typical for this neighborhood. The original plan was rejected by the Planning Commission in February of 2012. The Planning Commission stated that the plans needed to have the square footage significantly reduced. No quantitative feedback or guidance was provided regarding what significant meant, nor has the Planning Department staff been able to advise us on this matter. Therefore, the purpose of our study session tonight is to receive guidance from the Planning Commission as to whether the new plans satisfy the verbal guidance provided in 2012. Starting with 339 Bella Vista, the footprint of the new plan has been reduced 30% to 788 square feet. This footprint is similar to the allowable FAR for the site. Our total countable square footage has been reduced 25% to 1,413 square feet. The incremental countable square feet is located below the existing house and garage footprint in the space underneath the allowable floor area. This space below the main floor would otherwise consist of support structure. Also, we removed 6 feet from the rear depth of the house, eliminating the need for a rear setback exception. For 341 Bella Vista, the footprint has been reduced 30% as well to to 769 square feet. This footprint is slightly less than the allowable FAR of 835 square feet. Our total countable square feet has been reduced 25% to 1,552 square feet. For both homes, our total gross square footage, including cellar space, has been reduced 25% as well. As you're likely aware, our plan is to adjust the lot line to produce two similarly sized lots. This shift will also preserve the heritage oak that sits between the two lots and create two homes that are proportionate to each other and the neighborhood. Other items that we have adjusted in the new plans are: we have removed nearly half of the rear-facing windows. We have kept elements in place to block direct views to the Maggie Court townhomes. The homes now meet the rear and side setbacks. There is 34 feet between our two homes, more than double the 16-foot requirement. The normal setback's 8 feet, so it would be 16 together. We've reduced the rear decking areas. We've moved the driveway on 339 to improve its orientation with Bella Vista Avenue, because that was a concern of neighbors regarding traffic. Although we are requesting a variance for driveway, this is typical for the neighborhood, and our homes and garages will be further from the street than 7 out of the 10 homes on this side of Bella Vista. The civil engineer has commented that the new plans will result in less cut fill and less impermeable coverage than the original plan. The new plan homes are 42 to 55 linear feet from the Maggie Court townhomes. This represents much farther separation than occurs with most other homes in this neighborhood. Also, the new plan preserves several more mature trees. In the new plan, the new homes will exist under the existing tree canopy. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. We have our designer here tonight. I'm running out of time, but I wanted to, I'm hoping for some two-way dialogue tonight in order to, identify some of the work we've done to better identify, our old plan and our new plan and our height relations and our distance relations to the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Are there questions at this time for Mr. Ross? Commissioner Birch?
Yes, you stated that you have gone to some effort to ensure that the views to the back court are blocked. What steps have you taken for that?
Well, the idea is that wherever we have a deck, we want to do a 6-foot hard fence right at the deck, and that is on the plan. And then on our upper level windows, that now is a 5-foot sill. And then our original plan and this plan both have 30-inch planting shelves to direct any downward views to the townhomes. And that's been the case also that was in the 2012 plan. And we're concerned for the neighbors. We've always had concern for the privacy, and just like they don't want us looking down into their bedroom, we don't want them looking up at us as well. And we think it's important. And the images that I provided, we just showed it without, the tree in the middle is to scale to show that these houses are lower than the tree canopy that these neighbors are already used to. And the idea is that we don't want it to be the case where anyone can walk to a window and look straight down into their bedroom. And that's been our goal from the beginning.
Thank you.
Other questions at this time? Let me ask you a couple then. Okay. You're asking for a variance, would potentially be asking for a variance on the front part in order to accommodate shorter driveway. Just for the record, can you walk us back through that? Exactly what you're doing and the rationale for it?
Well, the issue that all of the homes on that side of Bella Vista, in a number of streets, 52 Oak Hill was just approved recently and built, and had the same challenge where there's an area where the edge of pavement ends, Then there's a public right-of-way, or in some parts of town, there's sidewalks. On this side of Bella Vista, there are no sidewalks. So it's a public right-of-way. Then there's our property line, and so we need to, our driveway needs to go from the edge of pavement to the front of our garage. And if you take that distance, it's anywhere from 18 to 23 feet, which is enough room for 2 cars to park on the driveway. Does that help? And that's the reason for the variance. We could push the garage closer to the Maggie Court townhomes and end up with, 18 is the minimum for a driveway, plus the public right-of-way to get to the edge of pavement, but that doesn't help. It doesn't help with the slope of the driveway, and it doesn't help. It would put us closer to the townhomes, which we're trying to avoid.
A year ago, with the other, there were potential concerns about safety, driving around the curve, and so if you remember those concerns, can you revisit those with us and give us your perspective on those issues also?
Right, what we've done, if you can see the driveway on 339, we've now angled the garage and angled the driveway to accommodate that curve in the road. So the egress and the access to the driveway is going to be easier to get in and out of there. The visibility will be much improved. We met with the town engineer and reviewed that. They support this idea. We met with the planner, and the planning staff supports this idea. We think it's a good solution to, one, it gives us a longer driveway, and then two, pulling in and out of there is going to be much easier, and it orients where the driveway meets the pavement is further away from the curve of the road. It's comes out where the road starts to straighten out a little bit.
Thank you. Are there other questions for the applicant?
And I would like to, I'm hoping we get to these things, but I would like to point out A-0.2, because that's really the most impactful visualization of our old plan and our new plan. And you can see the green is the new plan. The orange is the old plan.
That was very helpful. Are there any questions? If not, at this point in time, you'll have a chance at the end after we have a number of members of the public who would like to also talk.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So we'd call Jack Van Natta first.
Jack Van Natta, 165 Euclid in Los Gatos. I'm not sure how many times we have to come back on this, but it appears to me that the floor to area ratio is still double that which is allowable. I heard Mr. Ross say something that kind of threw a little wrench into my works. I'm not sure if the ratio is based on footprint or total square footage, but I thought it was square footage, so I'm thinking it's double the allowable. Item 2 of item E of the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines state that the objectives of the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines state that the projects are designed to fit with and avoid the site constraints. This plan appears to be one of fitting a square peg into a too small round hole. Excuse me. Item 9 states that the development does not dominate, but rather visually blends and achieves harmony between the natural and built environment. This project overwhelms the site. It doesn't just dominate. This project is too big for the property. The slope is too steep, and the development is unnatural. The view into the neighbors' bedrooms, which I here tonight, is being mitigated somewhat. I don't know what that does for remodels in the future when a new owner comes along. I don't know if that is like a CUP that goes with the land. The variances requested disrespect the time and the effort put forth by us to establish these, or by the previous planning commissions to establish standards and guidelines. Why have them if we don't follow them? Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Johnson.
Hi, my name is Erin Johnson, and I live at 150 Maggie Court. I am very much opposed to this project. I'm amazed that we're actually here again for a fourth time. I don't understand why Mr. Ross can't follow the rules. I'm wondering if he's accessed the town website. I'm wondering if he's checked out any of the brochures, the handouts that are in the lobby of the planning department. This one's on FAR. He's not reading, and I feel like he's not listening. I don't think he understands the meaning of significant. The definition, according to Merriam-Webster, is having an effect. If there was an effect, and if he followed the rules, we wouldn't be needing to keep meeting like this, and it's very disappointing.
Thank you. Matei Corral.
Good evening. My name is Maite Corral, and I live at 160 Magi Court. I am extremely concerned with the applications for 339 and 341 Bella Vista. I walk to Los Gatos High School using Bella Vista, and I know how busy it is, and I know in the morning and in the afternoon, and how fast people drive on that street. The road is busy and dangerous. I cannot imagine 2 additional very large homes that are not capable with the neighborhood and also being built on that tiny lot. And if this were to be done, it'd be adding to the traffic that already exists. Thank you.
Thank you. William Schweikert.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm William Schweikert, and I live at 144 Magic Court. First off, I'd like to thank you for what you've done thus far in enforcing the guidelines and the FARs. And without sounding trite, please keep it up. The appeal went to the council, as you well know, and the council saw no wrongdoing in your decision. So I'm asking you to please do that again. Please abide by the guidelines for the trees. I'm sorry, I don't know all the language here that goes with the Planning Commission, but also please respect the trees and the size of the lot by the guidelines that are in place now. There's one other thing I want to mention too, which is erosion. And what I've noticed is that the Magic Court homes have a wall built to protect the hillside, and that wall prevents the hill from going down. Where these homes are, that hillside is exposed, and it's eroding. And what worries me is that we're 5 miles from earthquake from the San Andreas Fault. And if you've ever been up there and looked at it, you can actually see the fissures. The earth is actually opened. It's actually pretty amazing. An east to west earthquake could send these homes down. And that compounded with the erosion. So I would like to see some sort of barrier or wall or something built to protect the hillside that is exposed, kind of like the concrete wall that we have now, to prevent erosion. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Decker.
I'm Sandy Decker of 45 Glen Ridge. It's been 15 years since I first saw this application, and I cannot believe you're seeing it still. There have been 3 or 4 go-rounds of you. In fact, I was sitting as one of you the first time this came into our purview. At that time, the buildability of this lot was more than questionable, and I am betting the following problems still exist because I just drove by. The slope, the drainage, the visual impact, the ingress and egress, the driveway aprons, the setbacks, variances from setback, floor area ratio. Why are we doing this 15 years later? Why are we not saying enough is enough? The applicant has been through every type of meeting this staff could put him through, and still they won't make him comply with the rules to build on this lot without variances. These neighbors have been waiting for the other shoe to drop for the same 10 to 15 years, 3 years with this current owner. Make a final decision and stop this never-ending merry-go-round.
Thank you. Patrick Tillman.
Evening, my name is Patrick Tillman. I live at 150 Maggie Court. I live with Mary Badami and Erin, her daughter Erin. I have a few points on here. Mr. Ross wants to have a dialogue with you because he doesn't want to follow the rules. It's pretty plain and simple. Then the rules he wants you to, or the dialogue he wants you to engage in, has to do with not just minimal this, that, or the other thing. That far variation is double, triple, depending on how you want to count things. But that's why he wants the dialogue. There was a Mr. Sullivan that came up here, and I want to borrow, I don't want to plagiarize what he said, but he said something I thought was pretty profound. It had to do with that other lot, making a non-conforming property more valuable than a conforming property. That's exactly what's going on here. We've got a property that is, it's not described adequately in this, but they want to build these 2 humongous homes. For us, their basement looks into our third floor bedroom. And you know, some of you have already said this before. Couple of things. You probably saw the staff report. You cannot rely on the staff report. The prior 2 staff reports, I submitted a written objections to them. They were pretty lengthy, and apparently I have to do it again. I don't know how many exhibits I'm going to attach to the next one. My apologies, but it's coming. This cannot stand. This is not appropriate representation for this town. The 2 of the items on here, I'll be brief. They want, on page 2 of the staff report, they want the mitigated negative declaration waived. I went through that too and trashed that. Basically, there were 35, 40 points, and according to the mitigated negative declaration, there's no impact on us at all. And I think you have heard that that's not true. And the same thing applied to the staff reports. The other thing that's in this more current February 13th report is that, still on page 2, that the project is consistent with the hillside development standards and guidelines. I can't believe that was put in here. That must have been a mistake. That floors me. There's some diagrams, pictures up here. Part of the package in the misleading content is, take a look at these photographs, and they're all, I think they may have adjusted the slope a little bit on this one, but all the other diagrams were in. Now, I'm familiar with the CAD system, computer assisted design. All the slopes are in there at 30%. Same with this here, I think it may be 35. You put a 60-degree slope on any one of those diagrams, and you will have a different opinion about the project immediately. So there are general plans, there's zoning, there's hillside development standards and guidelines. There's a long history of considered thought put into all of them. I think some of those items should be stated to Mr. Ross in the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Vitaly Stolsky.
Good evening. My name is Vitaly Stolsky. I live at 152 Maggie Court, and I own the property. As I stated before during the previous hearing, me and my family were extremely concerned about the project, and the areas are well stated: privacy, significantly exceeding FAR, environmental and financial impact on the neighbor properties, safety, convenience, traffic, possible construction problems. All of those worries us a lot. Front of the Prospect property faces our bedroom directly and overlooks our patio. Given such close proximity, there is no problem to see in our property, and I'm 6'4", so 6-foot fencing wouldn't do appropriate protection for my height. And at the same thing, there are a bunch of things on this plan that wouldn't prohibit to look into our property through the windows or through other from the pathways and so on. And there are also problems with light and noise that cannot be kind of mitigated with fencing or tinted windows. Houses are built on 53% slope and far exceeds specified by all the rules by 100%, and I just because of the safety cannot agree with such increase. The project is going to be subject to very strong and violent ground shaking during the imminent large earthquake, and we all know it's going to happen. Landslides, drainage damages, or other possible hazards that are caused by this earthquake is going to pose the safety threat for our property that is right down the hill from the proposed construction. So I'd like you to consider all these issues and make your decision based on the concerns of the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Badami.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Mary Badami, 150 Maggie Court. I'm opposed to the project. Town Council was correct in denying the prior application. The new application continues to be more of the same. The floor to area ratio is inappropriate for the site. It's narrow, it's steeply sloped, and reducing 300% of FAR to 200% of FAR is still significantly over FAR. Bulk and mass of 4,422 square feet is not addressed, and the seller does not meet the intent of the seller policy. At double the FAR, the related issues for the prior denial remain unchanged. Bulk and mass, pedestrian safety, front setback, side setback, cut and fill, grading standards, lot line adjustment, lack of neighborhood support. The town's position in the past on this property was strict adherence to the FAR. The site has not changed, the property remains steeply sloped, and there is no reason to change the town's position. We asked for consistency with the Planning Commission ruling in 2003. We also asked for compliance with the hillside standards adopted in 2004. Dan Ross, a town representative, serves on the North 40 Advisory Committee and General Plan Update Committee. Having served in these capacities, he should know we regard our developmental standards very seriously. We're disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Chin.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Chin. I reside at 154 Maggie Court. I wanted to recall some comments made by commissioners during prior hearings that I believe are still relevant today. During the October 12, 2011 Planning Commission meeting, it was Commissioner Erickson who commented that the style is appropriate for the neighborhood, but the size is not, that you would not support such a far increase due to topographical constraints and the proximity to the residents below, and the size of the homes need to be significantly reduced. During the Planning Commission meeting almost a year ago today, on February 8th, the prior application was denied, and Commissioner Talasfor, who's not here this evening, noted that she was disappointed that the direction given in October was not followed. Building too far is never a guarantee, and she could not understand the applicant's definition for livability. Also, that the houses are very well designed, but not for these lots. The new application does not adequately address any of the issues identified at the prior meetings. The extreme slope of the hill that other people have mentioned, allowing the 4 feet of cotton fill poses a significant risk to the integrity and stability of the hillside. Also, the privacy issue. Adding smoked glass, planter boxes, or sills will not adequately address the significant invasion of privacy or the impact on the planes of light that homes with the bulk and mass proposed will create. And last and most important, the FAR. It's not where you start, it's where you end up. So the percentage cut from where the applicant started is less relevant to what the ratio to is of the FAR. And other people have commented we're still at 200% of the FAR. I acknowledge and respect that the applicant has a right to build something, but for all parties concerned, ask that the Planning Commission give the applicant clear direction to comply with the hillside standards and guidelines, and propose something that does not exceed the FAR or grossly impact the safety and privacy of the neighbors. You can read all the reports, but if you want to get a real visceral impact of what the proposed development will be on the neighbors, I invite you to walk the site, come to our homes, and see what it's going to be like.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. Forrest Strait.
Forrest Strait, 146 Maggie Court. My concern tonight is, and I'll be very brief, it's just about trees. Earlier, Lot 12 behind you, that we heard how the architect, the impact of the trees was really important in his design of the entire project and the way he laid out the house. One of the concerns here, and I applaud him, and these trees are very beautiful in its design, but not nearly as big as the ones on our hillside. We have 3 large trees, and at least 2 of the biggest, looking at this plot map up here, at least 2 of the biggest are going to be torn down for these 2 homes. There's just no way with trees that size that we should be tearing those down. I mean, it's a beautiful site, but the impact of those 2 huge trees, I'm sure you visited the site, there's no way we should tear those down.
Thank you, Mr. Strait. We don't have any additional cards. We would invite anyone else who would like to speak from the public. Gone. Mr. Ross, give you an opportunity to speak, to address the commission again, if you would like.
Well, again, the goal tonight is just to open up dialogue. This is a complicated project and a complicated site, and part of the challenge here for the neighbors and for us is it's difficult to cover everything in 3 minutes and 5 minutes, and there are complicated issues that we should take the time tonight to review, to vet out, and work together. And I've tried to do this with the neighbors. They've had my contact information since 2008. Not a single one of them has reached out to talk about these issues. So it's hard for me to sit here tonight and listen to their comments when not a single one of them has made an effort to reach out to me and work through these issues. I cannot understand why they're taking that tactic. None of them reached out to me after the 2012 meetings. I've put letters underneath their doormats. I've been civil. I've asked to address these issues with them, and not a single one of them has contacted me to meet. And same with this hearing. I reached out to them, put a note under their door a week ago, didn't hear from anybody. But briefly, to address some of their comments, Maggie Courts doesn't follow the rules. That site was zoned single-family resident, 8,000 square foot lots. What they ended up with is those lots are 1,307 square feet. The townhomes are 1,650 square feet, plus a 550-foot garage. Their density is 126% of FAR. You add the garage, it's 160% of FAR. So for them to sit here and say that, you know, the FAR rule is being broken, they've broken it themselves. Another goal of ours, it happened to be coincidental, that if we put our footprint down to around 800 feet, then the question is, what do we do with that area under there? Well, it also works out where working with that footprint ends up to be a similar square footage to what they occupy on a 1,300 square foot lot. Our lots are 5,000 square feet. We're not being penalized because of the hillside design guidelines. We have an average slope in the 30s. The reason a 50% number got floated around is because at the bottom of our lot, the HOA there cut a man-made trail that's 100% cutoff. So that skews our topography report. But in the buildable area of our site, it's in the mid-30s. It's less steep than the mid-30s that was stated on 52 Oak Hill. You can walk that site and walk our site, and you'll see it. A neighbor in that townhome complex called me after our last hearings and said, Dan, we hear each other's air conditioning units, we hear Highway 9, we hear Highway 17, we hear each other's garage door openers open up, we hear each other between the walls. They do not have absolute privacy there. Their balconies are attached, they look into each other. They're 25 feet apart across a driveway, or 7 feet apart, and they're 35 feet tall, medium density housing. I have a couple other notes I want to say. A point that was made at the council meeting was, and by this panel, was if the houses don't fit, they're probably too big. And a big part of our effort was for the house to fit at the back of 341, the most southerly home, has always fit on the rear setback. 339 butted into the 20-foot rear setback a year ago because we had the width of the trail. And we thought, when you count for the width of the trail, and there's some variation because the trail moves, but the point was we met that 20-foot setback. We now meet the 20-foot setback on our property line, and we have the width of the trail. So a big part of our goal was to not have to ask for exceptions. And we're to that point now. We don't have side setback exceptions. We don't have a rear setback exception. And the front setback is typical for the street. And we're further from the street than 7 of the 10 existing homes. Ms. Decker made a comment. She has a home across the street from her that has a setback exception. These lots are non-conforming. They're less than 8,000 square feet. And there's examples of exceptions and variances all throughout this town. So I would like to have a two-way dialogue tonight because I'm hoping that these plans have been studied by the neighbors and by this panel so we can all have a better understanding of the work that we put in to arrive at this point. And stop me if you want me to stop, but I want you to look at A-0.5. This is a big part of the conversation right now. If we can all turn to this sheet. It's the top part of the page states allowed under current zoning. A-0.5. So you can see it up here now, if I don't know how readable it is for you. But it was a big part of our plan after leaving this meeting in 2012. How do we build an 800 square foot house? All along, staff has told us that 800 square feet is not a livable home by today's standards. You're going to be able to do something more than 800 feet. How do we build something that's clever, that accommodates livability, and also mitigates impact to the neighbors? So we spent time in this illustration because we could build an 800 square foot house, which is illustrated in the top part of this page. And it just gives you two views, one from the south, one from the north. So the question is, we could build that, then what do we do with that area underneath that home? The neighbors could look at that, which is stilts. On 52 Oak Hill, they have some portion of their home where they left those areas open as indoor-outdoor patios. Then the question is, if we're going to leave that open as support structure for the home and leave it as storage and it's patio, there's still going to be human beings in that area. Then the question is it better off to be closed? It makes it more livable for the occupant, and it makes it quieter for the neighbors next to us. We could leave that open, build an 800 square foot house. How does that help either party? It leaves us with an 800 square foot house, and it leaves the neighbors with occupants still occupying that lower area. And we could fully do that today. We could turn in that plan and build that. So then I want you to look below. You know, this is an illustration of how do we make that area usable and minimize the impact to the neighbors. And this also shows the reduction in windows. And there are illustrations in the plans, if you study them, that show the window heights, like the 5-foot windowsill. So the combination of a 5-foot windowsill and a 30-inch planter on the upper levels blocks the lower view. And on the lower levels, we're open to doing a 7-foot fence, if that helps. And that's hardscape that does block the view. We also have a landscaping plan that, you know, we were discouraged from putting landscaping on these plans because people thought it would just disguise as reality or whatever. But in this case, Mr. Straight commented that it's, you know, we shouldn't be taking down trees or this or that. The two large trees, if you stand on the site for 341, the trees will remain. The trees will stay that are between our home and his home. And they're tall, thick, mature trees. Those trees are not moving. And it will be augmented with additional landscaping at a lower level underneath those trees. That's illustrated on A-4-2. Well, I'll put it up here so everybody can see. It's this, it's down that way, but you can see this illustration here where our homes are significantly lower than the existing tree canopy that they're used to living with. And then those are the trees to scale that exist on the site now. So in regards to Mr. Straight's property, he's going to have mature screening that will not be going away.
Let's see if there are questions that commissioners have of the applicant at this point in time. Commissioner Smith.
Before I ask the applicant, I just want, could the staff please state for the benefit of everyone the difference between square footage and the footprint? The total square footage of a home and the footprint, because we've heard a lot of comments tonight about that.
The floor area ratio is the amount of floor area allowed, and it is a ratio of floor area to based on size of property. It is reduced based on slope, and that's why this property has such a penalty on the FAR. Floor area ratio, all floor area is counted towards that. First floor, second floor. The only thing that would be exempt would be a cellar element. And there is a lot coverage number, that is 40%. That is a building coverage, so they can't cover more than, and they are meeting that criteria. It is the total floor area that's allowed for the property that is being requested to be exceeded.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
This is a question of you. I'm just troubled by this procedure. Normally, if we have a study session, it is a give and take. Problem I have here is the give and take presupposes that you're going to make some adjustments as opposed to having more fundamental issues. So I'm a bit confused by the process tonight, because I have fundamental issues here. I don't want to talk about tweaking the design. So I can understand the level of frustration. On the other hand, we have two very bad lots. And I don't know that it's our job to solve the design problem on two very bad lots. I don't blame the applicant for that, but I can't solve the applicant's problem either. So I don't know what the point of this drill tonight is.
To the extent that I understand, Commissioner O'Donnell, the applicant asked to have a study session to get any significant feedback that was different than has been provided by the commission at earlier times when formal applications have come forward. So I think it's perfectly acceptable if we don't have any additional feedback to provide the applicant than that has been provided before, or not.
The comments I made before, I think, are still applicable here. I think we have two almost unbuildable lots. I think you really worked very hard. I appreciate what you've done. The problem is, at the end of the day, if you look at these buildings, they're pretty big, not so much in total square footage, but you're on the side of a hill. One of your houses is 3 stories. And you can say, well, yeah, but it's either 3 stories or it's stilts. Well, we're not going to approve stilts. So you have a problem that I can't solve. And so you're frustrated and I'm frustrated and they're all frustrated. But the study session presupposes things that don't exist in this case. Every study session I've ever been involved in, people sit down around a table and discuss tweaking. I don't see tweaking here. And if I were you, I'd be very frustrated. I'd say, well, then what do you want? And I would tell you, I don't know, because it is not. It's virtually not a buildable site or two. And you said, well, wait a minute, if I can't have a lot line adjustment, maybe I can just merge the two and build this big house. That isn't going to happen.
That's what happened at 52 Oak Hill. Same, it's 11,000 square foot lot, and we have 11,000 square foot lot.
Not on my watch, and we'll see if it can happen here.
No, it was. That was approved, I don't know the exact date, but it was approved 2 or 3 years ago and just built.
Well,
I watched the hearing that you were in the hearing on that.
Responsibility.
Trust me, I've taken a keen interest in that, and I watched you speak to that hearing. And we don't want to merge the lots. In the net to the neighbors, it doesn't help the neighbors if we tear that big oak tree down in the middle and build one bigger house.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you, as I sit here this evening, I'm almost as frustrated as you are, because I don't know how to solve your problem. You've come at it, I think, honestly and fairly. Your biggest problem is you have a very, very difficult lot. And I think I said last time you were here, it was almost unbuildable. And you know, it still is almost unbuildable. You tried.
But why wouldn't we have been told that by the town staff when we were in escrow?
I have no idea.
That's my problem.
Well, that's their problem. That's not my problem.
As a citizen of this town,
that question, hold on a second. That question is outside of the scope of the planning commission study session, so it's not an appropriate question for you to ask and for us to respond to. Thank you.
No, fair enough. And I'm not being familiar with the protocol. I don't know what's appropriate and what's not, but it's as a customer of the town or a citizen of the town, any of us should be able to go through this process and be communicated with in a fair way from the beginning till now. And we're getting mixed signals. How is it that the town's consulting architect in 2007 can say that the bigger plan, when there was only 8 feet between, there were 16 feet total, his only comment was, everything looks great, there's medium density around it, there's a hotel around it, there's the houses across the street have apartments. I mean, his point was these fit into the neighborhood. There's medium density housing next to the townhomes. So is the question, I mean, is the answer that I put in up 4 townhomes? Because then it's more compatible with the townhomes? I'm trying, we have spent a lot of time here looking at this from every possible angle you could possibly look at. And if you're telling me that we have to build an 800 square foot house on stilts, that's not what has been communicated to me from 2004 and 2007 from the town's consulting architect until now. And the takeaway from this panel meeting and the town council was, if it doesn't fit on the back of the lot, it's probably too big. And we've addressed that. We now meet these setbacks. And we're better on the front than the majority of the homes on the street.
I guess I would comment, Mr. Ross, that the consulting architect for the town provides consulting opinions about architectural style, but doesn't comment on all issues that would be taken into consideration in approving an application. So,
well, he had awareness of the townhomes.
Let me just say to you, you should understand. I mean, you should if you'd like to, but
No,
I invite you.
I want to learn.
I invite you to understand our limitations. We have to be. I think you have a wonderful staff, so I'm not prejudging. But whatever they told you, they told you. I didn't tell you. I have a separate and distinct responsibility. And I think I've been straightforward with you and honest since day one. And you've felt, not because of me, hopefully, but you felt like, wait a minute, I'm getting conflicting signals. But you're not getting conflicting signals from this planning commission. So that's all we can do. We can only discharge our responsibilities. And the only thing I'm going to tell you tonight is the same thing I told you before. Something you know. You have a very, very difficult lot. I don't know how to solve the problem. You've come at it intelligently. You've spent a lot of money. You've spent a lot of time. I feel bad for you. But that doesn't mean I have to say, well, gee whiz, I feel bad for you, so we're going to approve something. Maybe we will approve something, because whoever said tonight you have a right to build on that property, I don't take away from that. I think you do, and that causes me concern, because I think you do have a right to build on that. I just don't think what you're showing me is something that I would be satisfied with. And this is not on the side of the neighbors. I'm just telling you, when you look at that, those are pretty big. There's a lot of look to that thing. And so whether they're reasonable or not reasonable, independently, I think.
They're smaller than the townhomes.
Square footage is smaller, and I'm not defending the townhouses. All I'm telling you is if I'm downhill of that thing looking up at it, it's both of them.
24 by 32 feet. It fits in half the size of this room.
I've looked at your drawings.
I hope so.
Well,
but what I'm saying is, it's 24 by 32 feet. Miss Decker lives in 6,000 feet. I'm just saying.
Miss Decker is not before us this evening.
No, but how is it that a person who lives up in a 6,000 square foot house can say that our 24 by 32 square foot house is too big?
Commissioner Smith.
Okay. I am not going to discuss anyone else's property but yours.
Thank you.
Okay? Except that I am going to say that you have a right to build on this property. My questions to you are more to, let me tell you what I think you did do right. I think you solved some of the driveway issues that we raised the last time. So that doesn't mean that they're long enough or wide enough, but they certainly are different than what you produced for us last time. And it gives me, as I went back to the property, and I didn't have these pictures when I went back, but I actually was thinking of a solution that you actually came up with. So you've done that. My question to you, sir, is have you been down to the townhouses? Did you stand in anybody's backyard and look up? Has anyone invited you in so you could see from their perspective?
Yes. I mean, we've stood at the fence, and then we had a neighborhood meeting in one of the units.
So when you stated that no one has contacted you, no one has replied, you actually have had a neighborhood meeting.
Let's back up. That was at nighttime, so I would not have seen they did not take time. This was in 2008. They did not take time to point any of those issues out to me. So
what I'm wondering today is if you can't get back to square one with the neighbors below you. Because what we have here, we have to take the neighbors' concerns into consideration, no matter what. We have to take the hillside concerns into consideration. You want our feedback, and the feedback I'm going to give you is even the 2 homes that you've proposed, only one looks like it fits into a wooded hillside and the other does not. I don't think that's helpful to you, because I think your issues are bigger than whether or not a home has stucco or et cetera. I think your problem lies below you with the neighbors, and you are entitled to build, and there is some acceptance of that. But right today, what you're asking us to do, we can't design what is going to be approved. You can only come to us with a design. And so this study session, I would agree with Mr. O'Donnell, and I did question it myself. We usually do sit at a table. We don't take a lot of testimony. So this is unusual. It's not that it's been the only time it's been done, but it is unusual, and I'm not sure we can give you the answers that you're looking for or the result that you wanted out of this meeting.
Can we have that type of meeting? Because I don't know how these meetings work. That was my intention, is to have more two-way dialogue, to try to arrive at a solution.
Well,
with
again,
the neighbors and with you.
Right. Well, I would suggest that you arrive at a solution with the neighbors first, and then you come back to us.
How can that happen if no one at the town is mandated that they meet with me?
That's not usually a mandate from us. That is, though, part of the culture of Los Gatos is to meet with you, and I understand. I mean, I'm looking at the audience, and I can see which even side of the room they're sitting on. So,
well, I'll tell you what. The first meeting was they put me against a wall, put my wife in a chair against the other wall, and 15 of them sat that way with 3 attorneys in the room, and basically deposed me for 90 minutes. Not a single one of them looked at the plan, and they basically asked questions about how I'm, if I'm ingratiating myself with anyone in the town because I'm on a couple committees. And I would ask you, and I'd ask council members, have I done anything to ingratiate any of you?
Well, sir, that's not,
Well, it
first of
needs
all,
to
we're
be
not
said.
going to
They're
address
saying
that
it,
tonight.
so it needs to be put on the table.
But we're here for land use issues. All I'm telling you, my advice, you want some advice from us, is there needs to be some neighbor interaction here.
Right, but it's in their benefit to have nothing built here, so they have no initiative to meet with me.
I don't disagree with that, but it is not. We cannot solve that problem for you.
So how do we solve the problem? Are you willing to meet with me?
Mr. Ross, it would be fine for you to address the commission if you don't have any other comments or we don't have any other questions for you. I would only say to you, as a commissioner who was here a year ago, I was pretty clear at the moment of that hearing what my concerns were about the fundamental underlying issues. So those would be the same issues that I would have if an application came forward formally for a hearing. So unless there are other questions from Commissioner Birch.
I'm hearing you say you're looking for guidance, and I understand. I appreciate the amount of effort that you've put in reducing this, and it is a difficult lot. But the fact is there's guidance already written in the Hillside Guidelines, and it's unfortunate that what it winds up giving you is such a small square footage for the home. But the reason that reduction is there is to mitigate having such mass and scale from below the hillside. I agree, from the front, it does not have a large bulk. But if you are standing below that, even though it does have what we probably wouldn't consider to be an extremely large square footage, the mass is what you see. And that is why that provision has been put in place. So if you're looking for guidelines, they're there. They're just difficult. But if you want to have a study session, what you need to do is to bring something to the town that meets all the guidelines that have been put in place so that we have a starting point that's actually workable. Because what we have here clearly isn't going to work because it doesn't meet any of the guidelines that have been put in place. And I don't think with what you're working with, you're ever going to get the support from your neighbors. But I think there's a starting point. It's a small starting point, but it's there. And I think we'd all be willing to sit down and look at that, because at that point, we are starting with something that is allowable. So if you are willing to do that, then I think we have a better place to start with.
Okay, but does it mean a one-story home pushed further down the hill?
I'm not a designer.
I understand. I want to show what you want.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
It is not our requirement that you reach agreement with your neighbors. So I don't believe that. And I tend to agree with you. It would be very difficult, I think, to get them to agree to anything up there. But I also agree with the comment just made. The only thing, we don't need a study session, I don't think. But if we were to have a study session, the starting point of a study session is for you to be able to say to us, this meets all the requirements. Not, I need this exception or I need that exception or it doesn't. Because then we have to do something. You're much better situated to design buildings than I am. But what I guess I'm better designed to say, does it comply with our requirements or not? That's all we can ask of you, to comply with the requirements. Then if you want to sit around and talk about it, and, you know, design elements or something, that's what our study sessions normally do. You have a very difficult problem that I don't think I can help you with. But if you brought something in that complied and you said, look, this complies with everything, and that's what we're going to do, do you have any thoughts that could help us with this? Then I think that's something you can chat about. I'm not sure you need it at that point, because maybe you ought to just have an application before us that we vote yes or no on.
But that means an 800 square foot submittal.
I don't know what it means.
I mean, I do want to show. This is on your images that you have there. This is, when you look at this, the mass and scale of the townhomes and the mass and scale of the homes on the east side of Bella Vista are vastly larger than our homes. So I'm disagreeing with that our houses are massive when you look at that.
You'll notice those are on pretty flat ground.
They're 35 feet tall.
What I'm telling you is, you're talking apples and oranges. You're up on a very steep building area. They're not. And secondly, they're not before us.
Do you have any comments? Yes, come up here, Jake.
My name's Jake Peters. I live in Ketchum, Idaho, and I'm Dan's cousin. And I own one of these lots. The only thing I hear you folks telling us is a single-family home, merge those two lots and put a single-family home on it, and come back and make it fully compliant. Now, that heritage oak goes away because there's no way to make that work. So I don't know how to propose 2 lots and 2 houses and 1 house on 2 lots, and then let your town decide which one you want. We've pursued this 2 small 1,500 square foot homes on 2 lots on 800 square foot footprints, because that seems like what this neighborhood calls for, 2 very small homes on 2 small lots. If y'all want a medium-sized house on a 10,000 square foot house, that's the alternative. That could be fully compliant and gets rid of your nice tree. So, but I don't know how you make a submittal for 2 separate dwellings on the same dirt. And then what do we do? Then have you folks decide which ones you want on behalf of the community? We've already done this. We'll do the next one. But that's kind of what I was hoping we could get out of this. If that's what, so is that, how do we do that? I don't even know how you pay for that fee, because you're only going to get 1 approved, or maybe don't get any of them approved.
Right. So I would say, and I would only be representing myself, not the rest of the commission. As the members of the staff know, I raised a question whether or not the study session should have been even held at all, and whether it would yield anything of any value. It's not clear to me that it has. So I would want to be on the record with you that what the planning commission would do in the normal course of business, once you decide, and you've had, in my judgment, ample feedback from both the town staff, from the planning commission, from the town council, to determine what you think might be able to work on the spot and get, and when you apply the plan, I'm sure the staff, when you submit a formal application, I'm sure the staff will be happy to agendize it, and I'm sure the planning commission will be happy to take action on your application.
Okay, I just think that your community seems like this is more conducive to what your community is all about than one medium-sized home. That's what I just took away. Because that, we can build that, it'll be fully compliant, and the tree will go away. And we'll have one 10,000-foot lot. So it doesn't sound like we're going anywhere with this. But it does seem more in keeping with that neighborhood, and I've spent tons of time in that neighborhood. So I'm sorry, that's the type of guidance we're looking for. You can either have two on a medium-sized lot, or you can have one on a 10,000-foot lot, or two on smaller lots.
Yeah. Each of us is obviously free to take away whatever we'd like to from a discussion. I think we have we've discharged our responsibilities this evening, so unless any of the commissioners have any additional comments or questions, I think that we will bring the study session to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you. So without any other business, we'll adjourn the study session.